It is day 115 of the second Trump administration, and welcome to the midweek nightcap. The president's tour of the Middle East continued with a state visit to the Gulf nation of Qatar, which he called a funder of terrorism in 2017. Well, fast forward to Trump's second term and his announcement today that the country's airline agreed to purchase more than 200 new planes from Boeing. The luxury jet that Qatar plans to give Trump was not discussed, but the country's prime minister addressed it on Fox News.
Really unfair accusations for Qatar's trying to buy influence. Throughout, the last 25 years or 30 years, you will find Qatar always by the side of the U.S. in many areas and many things.
That assurance will probably do little to stem the growing concerns about this exchange. An NBC News analysis found that it would cost $1 billion and several years to turn the 747 into Air Force One. Say that 5 times. And taxpayers would likely have to foot the bill. Our own Garrett Hake has more on day 2 of Trump's Mideast trip.
Trump is the first president to visit Qatar in more than 2 decades, which is home to America's largest Middle Eastern military base, but has also drawn criticism, including from the president, over its close ties with Hamas.
The nation of Qatar, unfortunately, has historically been a funder of terrorism at a very high level.
And the president facing more Republican blowback over his plan to accept a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar, gifted to the Pentagon to serve as a temporary Air Force One, amid Boeing's ongoing delays delivering a replacement.
How do you know something's not implanted and it doesn't blow it up? So obviously there's a security concern there.
I can think of a lot of other things Qatar could do for us, like, for example, quit harboring Islamic jihadist terrorists who are trying to kill Americans.
Overnight, the president defending his decision on the deal, which has not yet been finalized.
With the United States of America, I believe that we should have the most impressive plan. Now, some people say, oh, you shouldn't accept gifts for the country. My attitude is, why wouldn't I accept a gift? We're giving to everybody else. Why wouldn't I accept a gift? Because it's going to be a couple of years, I think, before the Boeings are finished.
And this morning, President Trump meeting briefly with the new Syrian president, a former al-Qaeda member who broke with the group and once had a $10 million U.S. bounty on his head before deposing dictator Bashar al-Assad. Trump lifting U.S. sanctions on the new Syrian government at the request of Saudi Arabia and Turkey.
He's got the potential. He's a real leader. And, he led a charge, and he's pretty amazing.
With that, let's bring in our nightcap. Melanie Zanona, NBC Capitol Hill correspondent. Jason Johnson, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University. He's also an MSNBC political contributor. And Sam Stein, managing editor for The Bulwark and MSNBC political contributor. Well, I would like to say that Qatar versus Qatar is the blue dress of 2025 thus far. I just want to put that out there, okay? Sam, okay. Donald Trump's foreign policy strategy is touting billions in foreign investment with very few details. And to me, it feels like he is not necessarily operating as an American president, but really as an arm of some of his businesses, and like he's a businessman. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, sure. I mean, I think the central thesis of this trip is let's go make some deals, right? It's bring not just world leaders together, but tech leaders, business leaders, cut deals, some astronomical sums of money being thrown around or being reported as being thrown around. But then if you, of course, get to the details, it's much vaguer. And it's, and I don't want to sound like I'm adopting a cliche, but it is a realignment of basic American foreign policy. The first trip overseas to petrostate autocrats, cutting deals with them, cozying up to them, saying of MBS, I may love him too much, all the while simultaneously launching trade wars and attacks on Democratic allies. It is kind of a dizzying reorientation of U.S. foreign policy, but it does sort of fit the Trump pattern, which is he kind of marvels at their ability to do what they do. He kind of wishes he had the flexibility that comes with an autocracy, and he's not really even hiding it.
One of the Mideast experts told the Washington Post that monarchs in the region really don't distinguish between their personal interests and national interests. And, Jason, it feels like Donald Trump is like, yeah, we want to do that.
The man showed up and got a free plane. Okay, a free plane. We can stop.
That he might not even take because Republicans and Democrats are pushing back.
Which makes it worse, right? Look, because look, the way that these things used to work in a semi-functional, non-authoritarian regime is that when you met a foreign leader, they might give you, like, I don't know, a jersey from a team that won the World Cup or a ring or something else like that. What they don't do is give you planes, right? So that's a sign already of how Trump operates, which we all have problems with. But if you get into the details, Pam Bondi used to be on the Qatar payroll. The Trump Foundation wants to build like a golf course there. This is a personal business trip that Donald Trump is taking at the taxpayer's expense. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what it should be reported as. And what bothers me the most is that Republicans can sit there and say, we don't like the plane, but all the other deals that are being done, all the other deals that are being done that personally benefit him and don't help the taxpayer, they don't have anything to say about it.
You know, and I had lots of qualms with the plane. Sam and I were talking about it in the makeup room, and I said, nobody is talking about how this plane, he won't even be able to use it as Air Force One because it has to be outfitted. And Sam's like, lots of people are actually talking about it. He's like, people are talking about it. We're talking about it right here. Okay, look, Melanie, we also saw Trump with the new leader of Syria. And I do think it is important to note that the president is talking about lifting sanctions. Some Democrats are giving cautious praise on this to the president, actually. I want to know what you're hearing, because only Congress can take the leader off of that terrorist watch list, can lift the sanctions. Right. Donald Trump cannot do this unilaterally, so I'm surprised, actually, by the praise that some Democrats have offered up.
Yeah, Democrats are pretty reluctant to praise Trump on just about anything, so it was interesting to see a handful, not many, but a handful of Democrats come out and praise him on lifting those sanctions from Syria. But Republicans, on the other hand, were not coming out and supporting him for this. I think behind the scenes, there is a lot of consternation amongst your more traditional hawks, your old school Republicans, your Lindsey Grahams of the world, for example, who are still trying to reorient themselves around this new MAGA world foreign policy order. And I think this trip in the Middle East is just a perfect example of how Trump has really taken a more transactional approach to the presidency, but also, to Sam's point, you know, slapping tariffs on allies and then cozying up to people that were once considered, you know, taboo to even take meetings with at one point.
Not even taboo. The current leader of Syria was literally the founder of the Al-Qaeda chapter in Syria. He was a jihadist. He has disavowed, he has disavowed it. So I guess I could say he was a former alleged jihadist. But it is unconscionable. For me, as someone that used to work in the federal government, who used to work for an American president, and this is unconscionable.
But it's not surprising, right? This is why none of our allies want to share national security information with us anymore. This is why, you know, our European allies are like, look, we got to reorient ourselves for the next 20, 25 years. Because you have a foreign policy. We don't have foreign policy anymore. What we have is whatever Trump's personal business interests are. So since we don't know what that is when he wakes up every day, it leaves the rest of the world trying to figure out and scramble one way or another. We no longer have foreign policy. And that's the dangerous thing, because this is a part of a world that matters. The resources there matter. Our relationships there matter. But we don't know if we can do anything with it because we don't know what Trump's going to care about day in, day out.
Well, you know, I think some people would say, well, we don't have a foreign policy that we're used to. I guess we're going to all keep going back to the point Sam made. You've got, this is New York Times reporting, and I'm going to read it. Qatar, depending on who you are today, has continued to try and transform its reputation in the global community, in part by spending millions of dollars on lobbyists in Washington and other capitals. Among those lobbyists was Pam Bondi, now Mr. Trump's attorney general. It seems like their investment is paying off.
Well, again,
no one knew she was going to be the attorney general. She was not the first pick, to be clear.
Right.
She was the second.
True, but you know, when foreign governments make these investments, it's long-term investment here. We keep going back to the same word, transactional, and I think that's really what defines this, which is if you're the government of Qatar, you look at Donald Trump and you say, what's the best way to earn his favor? And it's not, you know, by appealing to his epic humanitarian record or his morality or anything like that. It's to give him a gift. Or it's to hire a lobbyist who has good access to him. Or it's to hire a lobbying shop that has good access to Washington, D.C. And so in each of these cases, and I would even tie it back into the decision to lift the Syrian sanctions, what Trump is doing is he's saying, what's the most immediate need that I have to satisfy and how can I get through that transaction?